I am a family childcare provider in southern Utah, which is we're sort of like right in the middle of Las Vegas and Salt Lake. And so we are a more rural area. We do have a college here, but I've lived here for 17 years. Um, and and about 16 years ago, or actually about almost 17 years ago, we moved down here. My husband had got a job at the university, and I actually was working for the Division of Child and Family Services. I'd been with them for 5 years, and so I was working with them doing intake with child abuse calls, and it was a fulfilling job, but it was really, really challenging. And I knew that I needed a change for a couple of reasons. At the same time, we had two young kids. My oldest two kids were 1 and 3 when we moved down here. And we had a hard time finding a provider that we liked. We decided, I kind of decided after years and years of telling like different childcare providers, I could never do what you do. I finally decided, you know what? I think I could do this. Okay, so we got to work doing whatever we could. I mean, the first thing that we really did was we went and got a playground from Costco, and we just sort of like plopped it in the middle of the yard because we didn't have the money to do much else. We actually we had to spend any money that we had on redoing a retaining wall. But then we did the playground and just sort of like made these tiny improvements. We had this huge master plan, which we were so excited about. But you know how it is with family childcare, you can only do so much. And I actually had access to a lot of grants and funds through the state, but most of them were for like materials or indoor classrooms or toys. And so I was sort of constantly frustrated that the thing that really needed investment, which was my outdoor space, it was really challenging to get money for ever. So when the pandemic hit and we had access to all of these additional pandemic funds, it was so incredibly helpful for us. So we took advantage of everything that we could. Uh,
Welcome to the Learning Tree. We're a family childcare program in southern Utah with a focus on outdoor and nature-based learning and play. This is our program in our outdoor space where we have been able to make the majority of improvements with the pandemic funding. We'll start over here on this side of the yard. When we first moved into this space, the only thing that was out here in the backyard was this area of the patio, the square area of the patio. Before the pandemic, over about 10 years, we added this patio, we put in a sandbox and an area for a play set. We had another play set there that we had for several years. We added the sidewalk and this fence and a different gate over there. This area had temporary fencing that went across this rock wall and down that rock wall. And we had the space set aside for the garden area. But in the 3 or 4 years since we received the pandemic funding, we've been able to make a lot more improvements. We'll start over here. This is the side entrance where now our parents are able to come down and come directly to our program entrance, which is over there. We were also able to put in this permanent block wall, which allows us to ensure that our space is always in compliance and we don't have findings with gaps in the fencing. With the pandemic funding, we were also able to put in some permanent paver stones and some better surface for a lot of these walkways. This one, for example, would get worn away and would get grooves in it, and was kind of a tripping hazard sometimes for the children. So being able to put in these pathways has helped create a safer space for the kids. We were able to finish off this garden area, putting in a surface that allows for the kids to spend time over here, even if it's wet or has been raining, and we've grown some fun things together there in the garden. It's spring, so when I'm filming this, so we don't really have much growing over there right now, but it's been a fun addition to our outdoor classroom. This is our sandbox and loose parts area, full of sandbox toys. Of course, lots of loose parts that we can gather from donations and nature. Over here, we have more of the pathways that we were able to put in for the kids. We also added these safety handrails. As we put the yard together, we just had to do it piece by piece, and the kids were really good at navigating these, but the safety rails have helped make this more accessible even to our younger kids to be able to spend more time out here and practicing up and down the stairs. We were also able to put in this nice metal gate in the back. Again, this was another issue with safety and licensing compliance, because it was a wooden fence that required a lot of maintenance and repair, and so the metal gate has been really nice to be able to just stay in compliance with licensing. We also were able to get a new play structure. Our old one we had repaired and fixed and revised many times, and finally just got to the point where it was beyond being safe for the kids, and so we tore that down and were able to replace it with some of the pandemic funding. Another fun addition is we were able to add fruit trees to this space, and this tree to this space. We have focused on adding flowers and little spots for gardening and allowing the kids to experience nature and their senses in a variety of ways. This is about the most exciting thing we have growing right now. It's April, early April here, so we barely have the buds popping, but these are chives, and it's the kids' favorite thing to come pick those and eat the spices. In the summer here, we'll have berries again. This is something we were able to do because of funding. And just continue to create a space that is fun and inviting for children and focused on meeting their needs. And then this is where we go into the indoor part of our space.
So I think the thing that is challenging for people to understand when they're not in this field is that it is very intensive work. It's not just like you've called the babysitter over to watch your kids while you go out for a movie and they're going to do pizza and a movie at home, right? Like, we are working with kids when they are in their most vulnerable stage, and there is the most rapid rate of development. And the work that we do is so, so important. And I have met so many providers over the years who talk about the work that they do, who say, you know, I don't do this for the money, I do this for love. And well, you have to, like, you have to love working with kids, and that cannot be understated. However, the work that we do is so important, and it is so requires such a level of skill and a commitment to continuing to understand and learn, that we have to start valuing it as a society. And that, I think, is really hard sometimes for our policymakers to understand, because they just don't understand what some of these families are going through. And they have their experience growing up, which generally the people who are lawmakers and in policy probably had some advantages to their early childhood experiences. And so I think it's hard for them to understand, you know, a family who might be choosing between quality childcare and putting food on the table. And they don't, it's hard to make that connection. And so what I would tell policymakers is that even though it might be hard to see the returns right away, and even though it feels like it's, you know, a huge investment and we don't have the money to do it, like, we have to start investing in early childhood. There's just not a choice. And